Right. First up, thank you for coming to the SovNop Learning Series, okay, or what we call the Sell on Value, Not on Price Learning Series. Matrix prides itself on its logical, not linear selling system. Meaning sales isn't a straight line, folks. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3. It doesn't work like that all the time, because what happens is we deal with people. We deal with people who are dealing with systems and dealing with other people. So it can be very jagged. It can go in a lot of different ways. What's important to know and what's important to do is to have a system that allows you to go in a logical way that takes you to the completion and always moves you forward. AMF, always moving you forward. I will be your speaker today. My name is John C. Kolensik. You see we got a little phonetic pronunciation down there for you just to make it easy. Kolensik. My website, you can check me out at www.matriximpact.com and www.buildyoursalesmachine.com. All right. So let's jump in. Today you guys tuned in to boost your sales and change the culture. And I want to thank you guys for coming in. So as anybody who's ever come to a Matrix webinar knows, we like to jump right into the learning here at the House Ideas. So let's get ready and let's rock and roll. Okay. Going to do a little fancy learning here up front. And what we want to do is we want to kind of lay out the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about today. One of the big items, you know, one of the big pieces of the topic today is change the culture. And so what we want to do is talking about how do you change the culture. And I want to demonstrate that by real simple science experiments here. All right, it's called changes of state, or the changes of state of water. As we all know, you know, when water heats up, it does one thing, and when water cools down, it does another thing. So let's kind of show you here. As the water's cooling up or heating up here, you see the molecules over there on the left of your screen are kind of moving faster. It's kind of bubbling a little more. And then we go all the way up there to 100 C, and what happens? Oh gosh, I'll be doggone. It's actually turning into steam there. So we're losing that, turning into steam. And look at that activity on the other side. Look at those molecules just bubble, bubble, bubble away. But what happens if we go down here? The molecules in a restive state, in a state where they're not doing anything, actually freeze. Hence, nothing happens. All right? So freeze, bad. Active state, steam, good. All right? Changes of state. Now, how does that tie into what we're going to talk about today? Well, let's look at the steam engine from a long time ago. All right? Steam actually powered this big old iron horse across the United States. It's a thing that got us from one side of the country to the other, ongoingly. And we still have trains in one way, shape, or form, and they're now powered by electricity, all right? And where does electricity come from? But electricity comes from nuclear power plants, okay, as one of the actual sites for the electricity. And how does it come? From steam created by the heat by the nuclear rods that go into the water, and that creates pushing the turbines to create the electricity. What's my point, folks? Whenever we're in an active state, when things are moving, when things are rocking and rolling, we've got a chance at doing something. But that means we've got to change our state. We've got to change our culture for things to actually happen. All right, before we get going into some other things here, if anybody can tell me what that is on the front of the train, there at the very bottom, right next to the tracks, the bar area, if you can see where my little pen pointer is, if anybody can chat over to me and tell me what that is, you guys will win a free lunch and learn if you can do that. Anybody who can chat over what that is, what that's classically called, you'll win a free lunch and learn. All right. Let's get started. First, let's meet some of our assistants today. And these folks, I like to call them the Best Practice League. These are the folks who practice the top 7% of all sales skills that are out there. At the very top there, you see the leader, Matrix Man, kind of hovering above everybody, floating above everybody. And then left to right, we've got Urgent over there, and you see him kind of disappearing and coming back, disappearing and coming back. We've got the sales coach here who's going to help us out and push us and guide us along. Timetable, who keeps us on track. We've got the question who helps us learn and learn how to ask questions and make sure we're asking questions of our customers. We got good old Gage over here. Gage helps us out in terms of systems and processes, particularly when it comes to hiring assessment. And then rounding out the group, we've got Contact, who's our lead generation expert. Contact. All right. Now, just like any good superhero team, they also have their villains that they deal with. And Best Practice League is no different. We've got to deal with the Masters of Bad Business, or MOB. They're led by, right up there, Dr. Know-It-All, that guy who thinks he knows it all and winds up sticking his foot in his mouth more times than not. And then from left to right, you've got the Master Manipulator right over here. You've got Time Thief in the purple outfit there with the little clock on the inside. And then you got somebody here in the middle. We'll get back to him. You got Disogre, the key to disorganization. He messes up virtually anything. And then Mr. Presentation, the guy who just talks himself out of the sale. But over here we also have somebody else too, and let's see who that is as he becomes clear. Well, gosh, I thought Timetable was a good guy. Well, you know, we'll have to get back to that. That looks like a mystery to solve for another day. All right. All right, uh-oh. Sorry, folks. All right. Sorry about that little technical glitch there. Let's get off the Masters of Bad Business, and let's move on to some webinar how-tos. Webinar how-tos. First of all, you guys, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. All right, but the way that we can communicate back and forth is through use of the questioning over there on your little dashboard that you have there. You can also chat me something special. The reason why you say you can chat me something special or something directly to me is because I have folks here who are taking the questions for me and writing those down. But if you want to chat something over to me specifically, please feel free to do that too. It's pretty simple. It's a basic chat device right over to your right. Now, also, so everybody knows, I stay in the webinar typically 20 minutes to an hour or so after to answer additional questions that come up. So if I don't get to your question over the course of the webinar, it's because I'm trying to get through everything, but I will answer your question. I absolutely promise to answer your question. I will stay on as long as it takes to make sure I get to every question that I can. All right. Wait a second. I think we've got an answer here. Hold on a second. Let me see if we got an answer here. Nope, no answer. Thought I had an answer to the question. All right, we're going to close that question down. The answer to the question of what that grill was on the front of the train is called a cow catcher. A cow catcher. All right, they called it a cow catcher because it did exactly that. Cows would wander over on the front of railroad tracks, and that would, allow the trains to get underneath and scoop it and kind of push it out of the way. Now, I won't get any grosser than that, but that's exactly what it's called. It was called the cow catcher. All right, before I get going, questions on how to utilize the questioning function or anything about chats or anything like that. Everybody okay with that so far? All right, moving right along. Let's get rocking. All right, reality check, folks. Reality check. Where are we at for the year? All right. First, let's deal, with some logistics that we've got to deal with. All right. We've got to deal with what our numbers are. There's no other easy way of putting it. This might sting a bit, but the year is more than half over right now. So where are we at? Are we at 50% of quota? Are we at 110% of quota? Are we at 70%? What numbers are we at right now? This is a critical question. You might be tuned in here because you have a sales team. You might be tuned in here because you're an individual who are trying to get better. I don't care, what the situation is, but you've got to ask that question. Where are you at right now? Are you going up? You going down? You flatline? What is it? The next question you got to ask yourself is, what are you ready and willing to do to make your numbers and hit your goals? We're going to go into some stuff today, folks. It's not going to be easy stuff in terms of doing, but it's going to be good stuff in terms of doing if you do it. So what are you willing to do? What are you ready to do to be a success? All right, I got a question from Bob, and Bob is asking, in terms of the questions and where you're at for half a year, where do you think you should be at, or where do I think somebody should be at who's in sales? Well, my take on things, Bob, it's real simple. If you're past half year mark, you should be at a minimum of 70 to 80% of your quota attainment by now. Because guess what? 100% of quota, just being at 50% now and finishing the year for 100%, that's called doing your job. You want to do better than your job. You want to be ahead of the pack. You don't want to be just 50% now and hope to get 100% by the end of the year. You want to be 75, 80, 90% at a minimum so you can finish the year and be on top of things and really make some good money. Answer your question? All right. Anybody else got a question? All right. Next piece of logistics we need to deal with. If we've answered that critical question in terms of what we're willing to do and we know where we're at, what are we dealing with? We only got one commodity at this point, and it's our time, meaning without time we can't do anything. We cannot do a doggone thing if we don't have time. So let's break it down and see exactly where we're at and over the course of the year so we throw a little reality into the situation. All right. 2 longest selling cycles of the year, January 4th to Memorial Day. Guess what? We already passed that one. All right. That gives you 105 business days to actually sell from January 4th to Memorial Day before you have your first break. The next longest selling cycle is the day after Labor Day, which we're creeping up to, and before Thanksgiving. All right, which is a total of 55 business days. All right. Next thing is, there are 23 business days from Thanksgiving to Christmas and 68 business days from Memorial Day to Labor Day, with 4th of July smack dab in the middle. And we're just about, we're a little bit past the halfway point of that 68 business days we're at, with 251 total selling days in the year. You might be going, hold on a second, John, slow down. You're throwing a lot of numbers at me. Well, you're right. I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you because you got to know what your numbers are. You've got to know where you're at in terms of how many days you got left. This is the only thing I can think of to create some urgency in the folks who are sitting out there listening to me of what has to get done. You don't have that much more time. You've got to start implementing, changing the culture now, or you're not going to get that sales boost you need to end your year to hit your mark. It's simple as that. All right. So let's get started today, and what we're going to be talking about is boosting your sales and changing the culture. But you know what? Let's do this. Let's look at it like this. Let's first talk about changing the culture, then we'll get to boosting the sales. And why do I say that? Is because many times that's what has to happen. We've got to change the culture before you can boost the sales. It'd be nice to boost sales and the culture change, but you've got to change some of the things that you're doing. Otherwise, we're just doing that old insanity trick, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Can't do that, folks. Can't do that. It's not always good to let things calm down. It's not always good to be sitting back and waiting for stuff. You've got to be active, all right? Think of the steam, active molecules, creating steam, pushing a locomotive, generating electricity. Got to be active, got to be active, got to be active. All right. First up. Foolish consistency is one of my favorite quotes. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. All right, so what am I talking about here? I'm talking about habits, traditions, and rituals. First, let's define these things so you know exactly where we're going here. Habit. Okay, a habit is an acquired behavior pattern regularly followed until it has become involuntary, almost involuntary. And you guys know that these are exact definitions because I got them from Wikipedia. I'm joking. I got it from the Merriam Dictionary. I actually looked it up, used paper just like the old days, and did it myself. All right, didn't get it from Wikipedia. Habit, an acquired behavior pattern regularly followed until it has become almost involuntary. Tradition, a long-established or inherited way of thinking and acting. All right, and finally, rituals, an established or prescribed procedure for a religious or other rite. All right. First thing, let's be very clear on what I'm trying to say here. These things aren't bad by definition, but bad by their use. It's your job to recognize and modify these things as needed. Give you an example. In the movie Forrest Gump, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it's when Forrest first meets Lieutenant Dan, and he's telling us a little bit about Lieutenant Dan, in the monologue voiceover. And he tells us how Lieutenant Dan has had a family member die in every war since the Revolutionary War. And he says to himself, boy, he sure got something to live up to. Well, guess what, folks? That's not a tradition that we want to uphold. We don't want to, necessarily have to go out there and die on the limb. That's not what we really want to have happen. What we want to do is establish a tradition of success. And the only way I know to do that is to change habits, traditions, and rituals. And the only way I know to change that and break bad habits, the only way I know how to break bad traditions and bad rituals is to set up ourselves for success. It's to set up ourselves for success. We set up ourselves, get how I led that in there, set up, haha, S-E-T-U-P. We set up ourselves for success by strategy, education, tools, user interface, and performance. This is a 5-point procedure that will help us to change the culture, whether it be us personally and the culture that we have to change and bad habits that we're trying to get away from and things of that sort, or if we're trying to motivate our team and move forward with that and get that rocking and rolling. All right? Whatever it is, if we utilize this, we're going to be okay. If you look at it and think about it, strategy, education, tools, user interface, and performance, what you're looking at is it's the proper proportion of sales learning to sales management, and then you've got to have some motivation in there as well. And remember, if you're an individual, trying to improve, you've got to think about managing yourself. So when I say sales management, just don't think about it in the closeted way of that you manage folks. Sales management means managing yourself. Because if you're an independent rep and you're out there, you're a sales rep, your territory is your business, all right? Your territory is your business. Setup, strategy, education, tools, user interface, and performance. Let's get into these and let's diagnose these a little bit. All right, first up, strategy. Strategy, uh-oh, who just showed up here? That's a master of bad business over there. Yes, that's Dr. Know-It-All. He thinks he knows it all. That's why he's popping up here on the strategy. But unfortunately, Dr. Know-It-All doesn't know it all. He's got little man syndrome, if you can tell. He's got that big brain, but he's a short guy. And the problem with that is he thinks he always knows the right thing. And he thinks he can just go and plunge ahead and do things without actually mapping out details and desired outcomes. All right? You've got to do that, folks. You've got to map out the desired outcomes. You've got to map out the details. Do you know what markets to pursue? All right, not just, oh gosh, we should be in this market. What markets are out there? What are you reading? What are you finding? I found a market for a customer just the other day. They're a managed services company, which means that they do things for folks' mobile devices. All right, so they manage the screens for their mobile devices. And I found an article for them just the other day about the medical field and how medical reps, when I say medical meaning surgical reps, are now making sure that they have iPods and smartphones that have big screens so they can actually show doctors and nurses examples of what their stuff can do when they're in an elevator, when they're walking down in a hall, anything to make themselves more efficient. All right, so finding these markets that are out there, that's something I did for a customer through some simple research. What markets are you pursuing? Titles and job functions, two completely separate things. You might say that the title that you're calling on is CFO or CEO. That's great, but is it really a job function that you're calling on? Is it really somebody specific that does something specific? All right, that can be a big difference. If somebody's a CFO, okay, that means generally that they're in charge of all finances. But what if they actually happen to be in charge of operations as well? So should you be dealing with that person or should you be dealing with somebody else? And so on and so on. No titles, no job functions. Map it out. Details, desired outcomes. Basic research. I just talked to you a little bit about that. Do a little basic research. I'm not talking about you don't have to be, a bookworm. You don't have to be an internet, Superman. All you've got to do is do the basic research. Find out some information about your folks that you're going after. Know about the marketplaces. What are the trends in the marketplace? What are they trying to do? What's important to them? If you know those things, when you talk to them, you will have something else to talk to them about other than, I was just calling to. I was just calling to say this. I was just calling to follow up on that. Have something else to talk to them about by knowing something about their marketplace. By the way, that's a title of one of my blog articles. You can check it out at matricimpact.com/FSF. Yes, that is a blatant plug for my blog. Next, delivery systems. What are the ways that you want to get your information out to people? Obviously there are things that we want to do, big big ticket brochures and shiny stuff and those kind of things, but there are delivery systems too that we want to make sure that we're using. Basic mail, whether it be email, whether it be other types of things like social media, directly below it. What are we doing there? If you're not spending time on social media, getting out there and using that to do some of your research as well, all right, which, let me point that out to you right here. If you're not doing some of your research through social media for things like LinkedIn, and even as simple as Twitter, if you're not doing that, I really question what in the world you're actually doing. You've got to be using some of these devices that are out there. You've got to know what's there and got to know what your marketplace uses. Not every marketplace is going to use the same thing. Find out what it is. Maybe you're in a more visual marketplace. Okay, maybe something you sell is more artistic, so it's something where they're going to use more things like Flickr or TwitPic, something like that. Maybe it's something where it's more idea intensive, all right? So they're going to be doing something with Google Analytics, and you want to do set up with RSS feeds, and so on and so on and so on. But you've got to find those things out. The initial touches, what are the things that you want to be getting out to them initially? Do you want to send out a shiny brochure? I'm going to tell you no. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what are some of the initial touches you want to do to get out there? What do you want to do when you're out there and you're in between appointments and you can get something to somebody, instead of just sitting down and have a coffee and a smoke, instead of doing that, what if you can do something else for them? What are some other touches you can do? Phone touches. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish on that phone call? One of the biggest mistakes people make is having no agenda when they make a phone call, and one of the second biggest mistakes they make is having too tight of an agenda when they make a phone call. What is it that you're trying to do with the phone call? What is that one simple thing that you want to do? In-person touches. What are you doing when you're actually out in front of them? All right. What's the purpose of a sit-down meeting? And you might say, well, gosh, John, that's silly. I'm supposed to ask questions or I'm going to present. Or no, it's not silly. What is it? What's the purpose? What are you trying to do? What's the reason for you being out there? If you don't question yourselves and look at this in a completely encompassing way, all you're doing is keeping the same old things that you've done in the past. And I'm not saying you're necessarily going to change, but question it. Don't allow what happened in the past to dictate what we're going to do in the future. It might have worked, and that's great. And if it did work, let's find out what worked about it and multiply it and do it differently. If it didn't work, let's get it the heck out of here. And then also all follow-up and ongoing relationship builders. What are you doing to continue to stay in touch? SIT. Folks that have been on my webinars before know a lot about my SIT lead generation program. What are you doing to stay in touch? Stay in touch. How are you doing that? What are you doing in terms of touches? What are you doing in terms of schedule? What are you doing? What is your strategy? What's your purpose for staying in touch with people? What's your how do you, all right? Change the strategy and you change the culture. All right. Oh, got a question from June. June asks, how do you know, what's that? Okay, June asks, how do you start to construct something like this once you have it? June, that's a huge question. Okay, that is a huge question, but let me attempt to give you as best of an answer as I can from where we're at right now. All right, how do you attempt to do that? How do you do that? Well, you've got to look at everything that you've got. You got to prioritize, then you got to think in terms of activity first, follow up next. All right? So look at everything that you've got, think in terms of activity, and then follow up. Now I know I'm oversimplifying it. June, if you want to talk about this more specifically, please give me a call, shoot me an email, we can talk about it, but this is a big thing. The reason why I say prioritize first and then activity, those are the two biggest things. Prioritize what you want to do and then get to doing it. Get in that active state. Move those molecules around, create some steam. Let's move that engine. Let's create some electricity. All right, active, 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 and then everything else. It's funny when you're active and you got a lot of contacts going. Everything else kind of takes care of itself. All right, and let's show you some strategy here by way of Matrix Man. Matrix Man hovering high above the earth, and you see what he's doing there. He's kind of looking at what area he's going to send what off to, and he's got the country divided up into 4 aspects. And I know we've got some intercontinental folks. We've got some global folks on today. We've got a couple people from Africa. We've got a couple people from, where is this, from Australia. Got a couple people from, let's see, in Africa, we've got specifically Ghana, South Africa, South Africa, Australia. And we got Great Britain. All right, so we've got some folks, so I apologize. Matrix Man is not showing a worldwide view to you folks. But you see how what he's doing is strategizing. He's looking at what different, what areas he's going to hit. And then what those different things are that those people will get from him, all right? Phone calls, mail, touches, maybe he's using some type of something, an email, whatever it might be, but it's got to fit based on your strategy. Matrix Man will tell you how to do it. He'll show you what to do. He is the man. Okay. Next up in setup, strategy, and then education, S&E, education. First question to ask yourself. Are you learning/teaching the skills and tactics needed to succeed? What I mean by that is it's every single company, every single market is going to have different skills that are necessary. And if you think that all skills are the same across the board, then you're crazy. There are some that are universal, no question. But you've got to make sure that you're on top of things. You've got to make sure that you know what those skills are. And the only way to do that is to constantly be learning, reading every day. For instance, we're going to talk about the winner of today, our book winner today, and I won't give that away right now, just so you know. But we do have a book winner for today for the book Switch: How to Change When Change is Hard by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, a book that I greatly recommend. Also, for everybody that signed up for the webinar, somewhere in the neighborhood of 377, 300. What's the final number? 395 people who signed up for today. They all get a free subscription to Sold Magazine, and we're going to talk about that at the very end. What are you doing to keep your skills fresh? What are you doing? What books are you reading? I just finished The Talent Masters by Bill Conady and Ram Charan. I just finished also Making Ideas Happen by Scott Belsky. In the past, I've read books like Differentiate or Die, How Customers Think, Moneyball by Michael Lewis, Spin Selling, of course, Rethinking the Sales Force, and on and on. What are you doing to learn those skills that you need? And what's going to work in your marketplace? Next. Are you conducting real-life simulation or practicing your skills you need on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis? All right, 2 notes on this, though, and let's be very clear. First of all, let's talk about, when I say simulations or practicing. When I talk about simulations, that's obviously referring if you have a team and you're working with the team and you're doing simulations with them. That should absolutely be done, whether it be for telephone calls, whether it be for discovery meetings, whether it be for proposal presentations, you name it, you should be doing simulations with them. And if this is an individual I'm talking to who's trying to get better, you should be practicing your skills on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. But the important thing is this. First of all, practice is something that you do away from the customer. You don't practice on a prospect, all right? Practice on a prospect, okay, or what I like to call pop. Pop goes your sale. That's what happens. Pop goes your sale when you practice on a prospect. You don't want to do that. How do you want to find out what works and what doesn't when you do it on a prospect? You don't want to do that. The second thing about practice and simulations is practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you might say, well, gosh, John, aren't you being kind of harsh there? You decide, gosh, it's got to be perfect, da-da-da. Well, yes. I don't want you going out there and making mistakes when you're in front of customers. I rather you, and by the way, that quote, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent, that's from Lou Holtz, all right? So I don't want to attribute that to myself. Another quote that I won't attribute to myself is something from General Patton. I'd rather my guys sweat in practice than bleed in combat. I don't want you bleeding out there in front of customers. I want you practicing and getting good in the office or in your home, not in front of customers. Do not practice on your customers. Next, do you hold refresher classes on previously learned skills? Okay, what I mean by that, if you covered certain cold calling technique, or you covered maybe you had somebody do a book report on a particular book for you. Well, did you refresh that in people's memory, or just assume that everybody just digested that and they all know exactly what the heck's going on from that? Well, if you assume that, well, guess what assuming does? And next thing, how do you know that they're actually learning it? You don't. Conduct refresher classes. Make sure that the previously learned skill is now taking root. The only way to do that is go back and revisit it, all right? If you're a sales manager and you taught something in June to somebody in the first week of June during your sales meeting, and then you want to see if it's working, come back and revisit it the first week in July. Okay, we talked about proper lines to get indoors, or proper USPs, unique selling propositions. We've talked about this before. Now let's see, can you actually give this back to me? Okay, how are you doing with this? Practice, 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 but then refresher. Always got to refresh. Next, do you test on learned skills and conduct whole team reviews? When I say test, it's different than refresher. What I'm talking about is test. Make something that has a edge to it, something that could potentially dictate money to them. Have some fun with it. If you're a sales manager, have a contest. highest score on this refresher test gets a higher commission, or gets a $50 bump, or gets a $100 bill, or whatever. But have some fun. Make it fun for them to learn. If you're an individual, make it fun for yourself to learn. And you know what's fun for me by testing myself and making sure that I'm doing things right? Closing more business. I know if I'm doing something right, and because I'm a sole contractor like myself, work with a lot of subcontractors, I have a lot of different people I work with, but basically what it comes down to is me. So the only way I know I'm doing something right is if I close business. And the only way that I know I'm doing it right before I walk out the door and I go to that meeting and to go to that appointment is by practicing, practicing, practicing. Does my wife get sick of hearing me talking? Sure. Does my baby and my cat get sick of listening to me talk? You betcha. But I am practiced and I am rehearsed before I walk out that door. All right? Test, test, test. Test, 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 and then finally, review simulations, all right? Have whole team reviews of these simulations that you're doing, folks. If you have a sales team, if I'm talking to sales managers, have the whole team review the simulation. You're going to get all stuff all from over the board, but if you're doing the right things and you're laying in the right culture, guess what? You're not going to get a bunch of people nitpicking. You're going to get people helping them out, and there is nothing more powerful than a peer review when done correctly. All right, and let's say it's not done correctly. Let's say that for whatever reason you got a bad egg with you, and that's going to happen. Let's face it, that's the way it's going to go. That's going to happen. Let's say you got that bad apple, that bad egg. What's so terrible about them hearing something bad about that? They come crying to you and say, "Oh, I can't believe Steve said this about me." Well, you know what? That tells you something about that person as much as it tells you about Steve, the bad egg. Learn from these things, folks. And if you got to get rid of Steve, that's what you got to do. And maybe you might have to get rid of the whiner. But make sure you know what you're doing in doing these things and that you're putting them out. Because if you don't know what your sales team is and things just start happening, I'm telling you it's going to blow up. Doesn't matter, though. You've got to try it. You've got to give it a chance. It's the only way to start changing your culture. All right. Question? Nope. No question? I see that. Somebody handed me off? Nope. Okay, nothing. All right. So we did strategy, education. Next up are the tools that you need. Oh, another one of the mob. And this is one of the ugliest, most garish guys out there. And you see he just kind of making you sick by the way he just keep on turning. This is Mr. Presentation. This is the guy that won't shut up. He's got all the shiny brochures and the charts and the this and the that and all of that stuff. But is that all the stuff that you really need? And that's really what the question is. Is that the stuff that you need? Do you need to have a bunch of shiny brochures? Well, let's talk about some of the tools I think that you need, okay? Scripts, okay? You might say, well, gosh, John, why scripts? Well, the way I view scripts are like this. You ever go bowling, you take your kid to go bowling, and, let's say your kid's, under 5 years. So what's the first thing that you have them do? You have them pull up those little guideposts that go up in the gutter so they can't get a gutter ball, right? Well, that's how a script should be used. A script is used like those guideposts that go in the gutters, so that way that the bowling ball doesn't come out of it. You don't want to go too far left or too far right, but you want to go down the alley. That's the important thing. Down the alley and hit the pins. But a script keeps us on that track. It keeps us moving forward. It keeps us, live in our head so we know what's going on. Another idea of a script is a USP I talked about earlier, a unique selling proposition. Somebody asked me what I do, and I say I help companies increase their sales 42%. Boom, just like that. Here's a little treat for you guys, a little in-class, a little in-seminar winner for you. Whoever can chat over to me their USP first wins a free lunch and learn. Go. Who's going to win? Who's going to win? Who's going to win? All right. All right, first one over is from Clarence. Clarence, you hail from Brisbane. All right, Clarence. you mind if I read your USP? Okay, thank you, Clarence. Clarence's USP is helping financial officers streamline and improve the flow of their financials. Simple, short and simple. We can sit here and critique it all day long, but guess what? It's short, it's sweet, and it's simple. And it's the easiest form of a script. Something short, something simple, something that you can get out real nice and easy, all right? Scripts, let's move on, all right? Letters, let's talk about letters. You know, what type of letters? Simple letters, all right? I'm not talking about long, detailed, ridiculous letters. I'm talking about simple letters that you can get off to folks. This is one of those areas that people spend and waste a lot of time on, is writing letters. Make it simple, folks. State who you are real simply. State what you do real simply. I help companies increase their sales 42%. These are the kind of companies I work for. This is what I'd like to do for you. Bang, and get in and get out. Simple letters. Make sure you have that. That's one of the tools you need. Article library. Make sure that you're collecting articles for your industry, different things. I could show you guys thousands and thousands of sales and marketing articles that I've collected over the years that I draw on for inspiration for things, but more importantly, I send out to folks and I get them in their hands. When I find somebody that's having a hard time with something particular, I go and I research it. First I check my own database, and I go out on the internet and I find what's out there for them, and I'll send them something along those lines. Perfect example, I'm working with my college right now, Kent State, and I'm helping them improve their alumni relations. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm coordinating with the head coach there, Coach Daryl Hazel. And what I do when I find something for Coach Hazel, I'll send him something just to kind of remind him of things. I found an article real recently about how in terms of the nonprofit world, you know, how to ask for things, and that if you always come at people asking for money, they're going to think that every time you call, you're asking for money. Sound familiar, salespeople out there? And so they talk about in that article specifically the way to do things and to have a successful nonprofit, and I got that off to him. Same thing for you all. Everybody's got different industries. You know, I happen to work in a lot of different industries, so, you know, it crosses a lot of different genres. If you guys got specific questions, feel free. I'll make sure that I follow up with you. But have this article library just like your knowledge bases, okay? Have this online resources of things. Use your toolbar to hit your favorites. And when you find these favorites, they're things where you can get good information for things that are out there. Point people in your industry to webinars that can help them. If you work with CFOs, are there any financial webinars that are going on? If you work in the industry, manufacturing, are there any lean certification? Is that important to them? And so on and so on. Knowledge bases, webinars, white papers, etc. Impact touches. This is the fun stuff, folks. These are things I love to send out. I'll send out. Actually, I have this. One of my favorites is I have these little vials full of fairy dust that I bought at a place called Kelly's Island, or actually a place called Put in Bay. It's an island in Lake Erie, and I'll send out this little vial of fairy dust. It's got a little chain. It's this little vial. It looks really neat. This little fairy metal thing on the front of it. It's really cool looking. And I'll say, you know, it doesn't take magic or fairy dust aren't going to increase your sales. Give me a call. Something like that. Or one of the other nice things that I do is I have this picture that's an X-ray of a brain. Okay, and it's a neat one. It's not a literal X-ray of a brain. It's a colored representation of it, but it still looks like an X-ray. I'll literally put that on transparency stock, and then I'll make that picture, and then I'll send that along with an article. It'll say something like, "The doctor says if you're having problems with sales and marketing, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning," and something like that. You got that transparency stock on top of a nice letter that goes out to them, and now all of a sudden, bang. Who knows what kind of touch you can get. And those are the kind of things that you want to be sending out and be thinking about. Fairy dust, X-rays, I've got a million different ideas, folks, but let me know and I can run some stuff by you. Car stock, okay? That's the things that you keep in your car for as you go on appointments. Now, you might say, you know, if there's somebody out there that's an inside salesperson, well, that's what you keep at your nearest possible, you know, base, whether it be at your right hand or your left hand, in your desk, in your bottom desk drawer, where everything that you need. For people who are outside sales folks, that's what you keep in your car. So whenever you're out in front of people, you always have what you need. Don't ever, 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 ever put yourself in that position where you run out of something that you need. It's the absolute worst feeling in the world. Oh, I wish I just had that. I don't care if it's a contract. I don't care if it's a brochure. I don't care if it's a business card. There's nothing worse or more unprofessional looking than not having what you need, particularly if it's a contract when somebody wants to buy something from you. Schedules, mail, drop-off, social media, all right? You got to have some schedules, folks. You've got to know what's going on. When is this going out? When is that happening? Social media. You know, if you're doing social media right, you know what you're doing. Let me give you an example of my social media schedule. On Mondays, I send out information that's about lead generation. On Tuesdays, it's about continual development. I call it continual development. You might know it as training. The reason why I label continual development is I think you train monkeys and you train dogs, but you develop people. So Tuesdays, I'm tweeting, putting notes on LinkedIn, sending out articles about continual development. Wednesdays, it's about hiring and assessment. Thursdays, I'm sending out CEO level information, and Fridays, I'm sending out sales management level information. And then rinse and repeat. The next week, it all starts all over again. My mail schedule is real simple too. First week, I send out X number. Second week, I send out X number. I spend the rest of the month following up. Rinse and repeat. What's your schedule? What are you doing? Drop-offs. When you're out in the area and you got time between appointments, are you dropping information off? Are you doing something, being productive with that? What is your schedule? If you don't have a schedule, what are you doing? If you're just, oh, well, I'm just kind of, I'm just kind of working and seeing what's going to happen, well, good luck with that technique and tell me how it works out for you. All of these need to be customized for your business. I can talk about a lot of different stuff that's out there, but if you don't customize it, it's not really going to matter, because what works in my industry might not work in yours. What works in the chemical industry might not work in the dry cleaning industry, and so on and so on. Question from Thomas. Thomas, if you can also tell me where you're from. Czech Republic. Okay. Thomas, what is your question? All right. Thomas wants to know, in terms of schedules, how detailed you need to get. I think it's the same thing as, like I said before, with the script. It's just like that bowling alley. You want to have these side guards to make sure the ball is going down the aisle. It's the same thing with schedules. You don't want to sit there and have a gun to your head. Oh my God, I can't believe that I didn't get out 50 letters today. But you want to feel bad if you didn't get it out. But you want to have enough leeway that if I didn't get it out today, I can get it out tomorrow. And it's the same thing in terms of social media posting. Let's say I was lax in my lead generation on Monday. I might start the day with some lead generation on Tuesday and then finish out the day with continual development stuff, and so on and so on. Have your guide rails, Thomas. Have your guide rails. But the key is what? AMF. Always move forward. Always move forward. All right. Question. Any other questions? Thomas, did that get you? All right. All right. Moving on. So we did SET, now we're on U, or user interface. User interface. What do I mean by that? Simple, folks. Everything needs to be hands-on. It's got to be hands-on. If it's not hands-on, if you're farming stuff out, it's a mistake. You never farm out direct prospect contact. This must never be done by folks, or rephrase it, this must always be done by folks in the trenches, okay? You never farm out direct prospect contact. I know some of y'all might say, well, gosh, what about, telemarketing folks and those kind of people? Well, that's great, but if it's a direct marketing contact or direct prospect contact, I want to be the one doing it. Who do you think is going to sell it better, telemarketer or you? If you happen to be in telemarketing, do you want to farm out your telemarketing to someone else? Of course you don't. You want to be the one doing it. Never farm out direct prospect contact. Biggest mistake people make. They think, oh, well, I'm being more productive. I'm getting more things done. No, you're not. You're being stupid. Never farm out initial research. This must be done by folks in the trenches as well. What I mean by that is there's going to come a time when you can actually let other folks take over some of the research. But you always want to be the initial person in there finding these things and getting things started. And you never want to stop doing it. Meaning, if you're a sales manager, you're the person who's going to initially set out on the path of getting these things done and getting this information for your team and getting it set out there. Eventually, you can turn it over to somebody in your team to be doing, whether it be a sales and marketing coordinator, or you rotate it among the salespeople, or if you're an individual salesperson, you're it. You're the one who's doing it. But regardless, you never want to farm it out initially. You want to go out there and you want to blaze the trail. You want to find out, and then you want to go back and revisit. I'll give you an example from my situation. One of the things I've learned is, in terms of hiring assessment, is I've always got to stay out there in the marketplace. I've got to know what's out there all the time, because for folks of you who haven't been out there looking for a job recently, it's changed. there is almost no personal contact. It's all about pressing a button and sending off a resume. You can send out 4,000 resumes to people, but it's the most impersonal thing you've ever seen in your life. It's the same thing when you're putting an ad on Monster. The whole world's changed. And I learned my lesson a couple years ago when I started to see this change coming, and I wound up missing a big opportunity for somebody because I missed out on some people if I would have done it a little bit smarter. Never do that again. I'm always on top of the hiring world, and I know how it works now. I know what good resumes look like. I know what they're being told, how the ladders and those kind of folks are, how they're critiquing resumes. I know what the ladders and these kind of folks that are out there, JobEarn, Expeteer, JobFox, all these kind of things. I can tell you what they're doing out there for folks because I need to stay in touch. Always be that initial line. You can farm it out later once you've established that beachhead, but never walk away from it completely. Next, working directly with your team, all right? You've always got to be there. You can't just sit there and say, well, go find that answer somewhere else. The minute you start doing that, this also kind of ties into individual attention and coaching. The minute you start farming stuff out to other people, that's who they're going to go to when it gets tough. And they're going to think you don't know anything. And probably you don't. You're sending them to somebody else because you don't know something. What a mistake. Stay in contact. Be smart. Learn the things you need to learn. You be the resource for your people. Work directly with your team. Give them the individual attention and coaching that they need. One other side note about individual coaching, okay? And it's something that I learned, and it's very, very true. It's from the book First Break All the Rules and another book, Now Discover Your Strengths. And the Gallup organization had a big hand in those two books. And one of the things that they found out was that the best managers out there sometimes will waste their time with the lower levels of talent, the C's and the D's of the world, thinking that they can turn them around. And what they found was by spending too much time with C's and D's, you wind up not giving the A's and B's, the people who have the most opportunity and the most potential to get better, you don't spend as much time with them, and as a result, they don't get any better. Because you're spending all your time trying to turn the C's and D's around, you think the A's and B's can fend for yourself. Be smart. If you got C's and D's on your team, cut them loose. Stick with the A's and B's. You don't have enough, not enough A's and B's. You got to cut loose C's and D's. Keep on hiring. But don't waste time with people that can't improve. It's a waste of time, and you don't have a whole lot of time to give out. Getting on the phone to show how it's done. If you can't pick up the phone and show people how it's done, then forget about it. I mean, one of my favorite examples of this is something that I did be the early 2000s, 2001, 2002. I was working with a third-party administrator up in Westlake, Ohio, and the sales rep that I hired was having a hard time working his way through a list. And he was just having a hard time struggling, couldn't get through to people. So he's like, John, I'm having a hard time. I go, here, let me do it. And I go, tell you what, I'll even make it fun. You pick the name. You pick the name, and I'll call that name. And the name he picked, the young lady's name was Penny, and I won't tell you what the last name was because it was kind of goofy, but he picked this name just to see if he could make me laugh during the whole thing. Well, short story long, I got on the phone with Miss Penny, and the name of the company, I'm trying to think if I should give the name. Probably shouldn't. Let's say, I got on the phone with Miss Penny, scheduled a meeting with her. 4 months later, they had a deal. Now, if you guys know anything about third-party administration or insurance plans, deals don't happen in 3 and 4 months all the time. But for whatever reason, this one particularly did, and it was one of those situations. I was able to get on the phone, show him exactly what to do, made it happen, and what happened? All of a sudden, his number started to percolate. Getting in the field, show how it's done, same thing as getting on the phone and show how it's done. If you can't do it, how can you expect somebody else to learn from you? You've got to be able to do it. Next. And finally, what's set up? Performance. So we did the S, the E, the T, the U, the P. Now, performance. You've got to monitor, you've got to measure, you've got to modify. You've got to know what's going on. How many appointments are they getting? How many calls are they making? What's their sales pipeline looking? What's their closing ratio? Are they improving? Is their sales engine improving? How are they handling their time? If you don't monitor, if you don't measure, if you don't modify, you're killing yourself. Now, let's take the first two, monitor and measure. Know what's going on out there, but then be smart. Don't just say, okay, I'm monitoring and measuring what's going on and the numbers suck. Modify. Do what you have to. Do what's something different. Do something and make a change. Tweak what needs to be changed. If somebody they're making a lot of calls but not getting a lot of appointments, well, find out what they're saying in their script. Listen to their calls and maybe get on the phone and help them. If they're making a lot of calls, making a lot of appointments but not making a lot of closes, well, find out what they're doing in their presentations or what they're doing in their discoveries. Maybe they're not asking enough questions. Maybe they're being Mr. Presentation and just presenting and not asking questions. Find out. Measure, monitor, measure, modify, and repeat. All right? over and over and over and over again. All right. Now we're set up. We are set up for success. We've broken down those foolish inconsistencies. We're talking about things that will keep us active and move us forward. So you might be asking, where's the sales boost? If the name of today's webinar is, boost your sales and change the culture. Well, we changed the culture, so where's the sales boost? Well, it's real simple, folks. By doing the setup method, you're already going to get a sales boost. But if you were looking for one specific thing, one specific idea, I'll give that one specific idea to you, all right? It's called a sit blitz or a blitz, okay? You guys, most folks know what a blitz are, but I'll go through it just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. What is a blitz typically? It's typically 1 to 3 days of intense lead generation. Key elements are usually phone prospecting and some street canvassing, and sometimes it's a combination of those different elements. That's what a typical blitz looks like, okay? And you might say, well, gosh, that sounds great, John, but what's the downside of doing something like this? What's the downside of doing a blitz? Well, it's what most blitzes lack. And there we have Disogre. He's come over here to lend his ugly paw here. And what Disogre will do is show us exactly what most blitzes lack. First thing they lack is preparation. We think we can just show up the day of a blitz and just start doing things. That's a mistake. As we learn from StratoUp, strategy, education, tools, user interface, we can't show up unprepared. Next. There are no systems and processes. It's kind of, okay, let's go out there and start making calls. Let's just bang away on the phone. Let's just start knocking on doors. That's not a system. That's throwing poop at the wall like a monkey going crazy in his cage, all right? That's not a system. And then finally, permanence of results. Most sales blitzes get that really nice short-term sales spike, but that's all they get, okay? And I won't say most blitzes. I'll say some blitzes get that really nice short-term sales spike, but that's all they get. What happens after that spike goes away? What's the next step? Where does it go from there? Well, exactly. So the question that you ask yourself is, why do you do a blitz? Well, it's obvious, because what you want is that accompanying spike. If your sales look like this and all of a sudden you do a blitz and it looks like that, you want that spike to be the new normal. But what normally happens is what you're seeing below here. Everything kind of returns to. So you got, June, July, August, we did a blitz, and then back down September, October. All right. What you're really looking for is something like this. Here's your normal month, and oh, there's a blitz month. But then you might drop off. But you want to kind of level off, and then it go up, and then you level off, and you go down a little bit, and then this is the type of growth that you're looking for, all right? That's what you want to do. You want to establish that new normal. So the question is how do we do that, all right? What do we have to do to make that happen? I got a question from Pat, but Pat, I'm going to ask you very, very politely here. Please, please, please hold on. I'll get to you, okay? But what I want to do is I want to get to this. So what we want to try and do is establish that new normal. We want to hit those new highs in amplification of where we're at. Here and here and here, and we don't want to go back down to here because that's a nightmare. We want to stay up here. So how do we do that? Okay, well, we're going to get to that. First, before we do that, let me show you some results, all right, and just see what you like about that. Now, this is what I do when I do a sit blitz. Okay, when I put my own methodology to it, these are kind of results that I get from an average call drop-off results during a sit blitz. Minimum through the course of two business months preceding the blitz, we get 5 to 10 high-impact touches, okay, that go out there to the prospect, suspect. Off of those 5 to 10 high-impact touches, that are hitting, multiple. And that, when I say 5 to 10, that's not just 5 or 10 individual. I mean 5 to 10 to each contact. So if our targeted base is 200, that's 5 or 10 things that are going out to those 200 people. So we're not talking about 5 or 10. We're talking about 1,000 to 2,000 type things that are going out there. Next, out of that initial burst of high lead generation touches, we've got 50 quality calls that are generally made by the salesperson per blitz day. Average quality call I define as between a 3 and 6 minute call. If you're not talking for between 3 and 6 minutes with somebody, I mean, let's face it, it's really not a quality call. It's you're in and you're out. If you're on the phone with somebody for between 3 and 6 minutes, it's quality. And if you do the math, we're talking about 150 to 300 minutes. You do the math in the course of a day, we're talking about maybe 2 to 4 hours on the phone, which is very, very reasonable in a blitz situation. What this leads to, these 10 calls, they equal 3 reaches. Each reach, okay, accounts for about 1/3 of an appointment. So 3 reaches get you to 1 appointment. Now you combine that with also doing drop-offs when you're also in the field, okay? You do drop-offs, you do 20 calls, that gives you 6 reaches, 2 appointments. All your numbers start boosting, starts turning around, turning around, turning around. You do 20 drop-offs, you can make 20 calls off of those. You can get 6 reaches, you get 2 appointments. Off of that, you get between 7 appointments set per salesperson. 3 appointments, usually about a third of appointment equals 1 sale. What we average is about 2.3 sales from the initial burst of calls and drop-offs. So that's not so bad for a couple days' work. They get 2.3 sales just for those couple days. But here's the big thing that you guys need to see. Because we've changed the culture and we've changed the way they're doing things with the SIT Blitz, the average sales revenue jumps 37% over 6 months. 37%. And why, do you ask? You know, what's the question there? Okay, and there it is. There's the question. What's the question about, you know, why do we get that 37%, or how do we maintain the activity and the results over the course of the year? You do exactly what we just talked about. Use the setup method all the time. Don't just think of it as a one-off change the culture and move off to something else thing, guys. Think of it as something that you need to indoctrinate. This becomes your new, wait for it, tradition. Your new, wait for it, habit. Your new, wait for it, ritual. Yes, these are the things that you're going to be doing now. You're going to be strategizing, big picture. You're going to be doing education. You're going to be putting together the right tools. You're going to have the right user interface. You're going to be tracking performance, doing these things ongoing, over and over and over and over again. That's how you're going to get better, and that's how you maintain the results. And that's how I might say that you get that new normal. And you get, instead of doing this, you get to do this, which is what we want. We want that step up. We don't want that up and down stuff. So boosting your sales, changing the sales culture, what are we talking about? Education, activity, events, systems, monitor, measure, modify, and repeat. Use the setup process, folks. It works, all right? It works. We want to stay in an active state. We want to continue to create steam. We always want to be moving forward. Now, you still might be thinking, okay, you know, we're doing this, but John, isn't this going against kind of what you talked about? Absolutely not. Never once do I say stay set on everything. Always monitor, always measure, always modify, tweak as necessary. Make these changes. Implement this in your blitz culture. Instead of just doing a blitz one time and watching up and down, do a blitz once a quarter. That way you can affect the entire quarter and carry you through. Can you imagine the results if you can get that initial spike from once a quarter and it can carry you through? It can be a fantastic number for you. But you've got to do things differently. Boost your sales, change your culture. Use the setup method and use the SIT Blitz technique when you need to. All right, little motivation for today. No more excuses, NME, all right, NME. How many of you heard these before? Oh, the weather, it's too hot or it's rainy, the traffic, my boss, my customer, my computer's got a virus, my cell phone, my PDA, my car. Oh, I don't have enough, but I really need, I can't, I couldn't, they wouldn't, they didn't. If only the company or he or she or they. Oh, it's been a tough day, tough week, tough month. It's Monday. I'd never do anything on Monday. Tuesdays stink. Wednesdays are the worst. Thursday, oh, Fridays people are out the door. All these excuses I'm sure sound familiar. B, move forward. Cease to complain. Your words move others. Your words will move you. Make yours send everybody in the right direction. Remember, complaining once less a day chokes off 365 seeds of negativity a year. Put a smile on your face, on a phone call, on a drop-off in the path of a complaint. Once daily, and then act on the results. I promise you'll be pleasantly surprised. And remember, NME is the enemy of failure. All right. One of the things I promised you all is a free subscription to Sold Magazine. Folks, I've got to tell you, as long as this magazine's been out, I've been loving everything that I get from it, as well as the main website, soldlab.com. The information I've been getting on a daily basis has been helping me. You might even see me retweet and re-LinkedIn some of the messages that I've been seeing coming out of there. It's good stuff. You get your, by signing up for the webinar and coming on today, you get your free magazine subscription. Just go to www.soldlab.com/subscribe. That's www.soldlab.com/subscribe. I'm telling you, folks, a lot of good info in there. You don't want to miss out on it. All right, a little bit of housekeeping for us. The winner today of How to Change When Change is Hard by Dan and Chip Heath is Henry Wilson of ICI. Henry, congratulations. I realize that you're not local here, so I'll be mailing your book out to you. Henry, very nice. Now, if you're not on the line right now, if you haven't, I show that you were on the line, but if you've clicked off, I'll make sure I get this off to you. Winner of today's Beth's question is Beth Warner. Beth Warner. Let's give you what Beth's question was. Beth asked me, John, you tell us about a lot of these great systems. Can you please, let me make sure I'm reading this right. Can you please show me an example of what you've done in your own personal business? Why is that the best question? Simple. She's holding me to task, folks. She's holding me to task. She's measuring, she's monitoring, and then, she might have to modify, but she is holding me to task. Beth, because you asked that great question, you win a free Lunch and Learn from us, a free Lunch and Learn from Matrix. If anybody else got any questions about Lunch and Learns, please give me a call. But Beth, congratulations. Way to go. Winner of most participative today is, let's measure everything up here, is by, let's just double check here. Yes, okay. Michael Mann. Michael Mann asked a total of 7 questions here that I'll have to be getting to in our post-webinar format today. But Michael Mann is the winner of the most participative. Michael, you win a Lunch and Learn for your organization as well. Make sure, Michael, that you stay on the line. I'll get you off information about exactly what that entails, okay? But congratulations to our winners, Beth, Michael, and Henry. Congratulations to our winners. A couple other little pieces of logistics. One last thing for us here. Breakout, an innovative sales and marketing event designed to build your businesses and look at that, create a new normal of revenue boosting results. 7/15/2011. Folks, think about everything you like about trade shows, all the good thing about trade shows, okay? All the good stuff that you learn and you get from a trade show. Now think about all the bad things that happen at a trade show. Get rid of the bad stuff, forget about the bad stuff, and you will be seeing the good stuff at Breakout, all right? September 15th, 2011. You'll be getting more information as we come along here. We're going to stay a little vague for right now, all right? Also, folks, please feel free, get in touch with me, matriximpact.com. That's our sales result website. It has a lot of good information there. Buildyoursalesmachine.com, event and media site. Please go there to check out what's going on with Matrix and what we have happening. The fantastic sales forum, matriximpact.com/FSF. All right, that's my blog. Sign up for the newsletter for those of you who don't get it currently. And also call me about the Lunch and Learn program, 216-347-6729. I will be very, very excited to talk to you about it. Finally, folks, you can either make sales or you can make excuses, but you can't do both. Thank you for tuning in to Boost Your Sales and Change the Culture. Looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar in August. I'm out of here. Well, actually, I'm not out of here. I'm going to stick around and take some questions. All right. Anybody who still wants to stick around and ask some questions, I am here. Okay. Let's see what questions I got here. Let's see. Becky, yes, you can get a printout of today's presentation. Absolutely, no problem. Also, so you guys know, video will be available. Everybody will be getting a link to the video. All right, let's see. All right, next question. How do we determine, okay, this one comes from Hans, and Hans asks, how do we determine what skill and what skills are necessary by our individual marketplace? Well, Hans, that's a tough question for me to answer, but if I were you, the way I would look at it is say, okay, who are the best guys that you got right now on your team, okay? Who are the folks that you got that are really knocking it out of the park? I would go and I would model those people. I would try and figure out exactly what those people were doing. I would ask them, what are they doing? I would follow them around. And then once you find out what those people are doing, then you take those things and implement them. Now remember, Hans, that sometimes that the things that people are doing are, how can I say it, are specific to them, and they're good for them, okay? They're not necessarily going to be good for everybody. That's okay. But you can still learn from it. You can still learn from it. You've got to know what works in your industry. You know, that's a tough thing. Hans, I can go into a little more detail with you, specifically if you could tell me some more things about your industry, but we have to do that offline, all right? All right. Next question. Question coming in from Teddy. And Teddy has a question about the book, Switch. Okay, what do you want to know, Teddy? Teddy wants to know, what is it about the book that I like so much? Well, if you think about it, it's kind of what we're talking about today about change, okay, and about changing our culture. What the authors, Chip and Dan Heath, do, they do two things. First of all, it's a very simple, quick read, but they have just a slew of great examples of real-life things of how people have changed big situations implementing exactly what they're talking about. Now, they didn't realize that they were implementing exactly what they're talking about, but what happened was they actually used the same process that they're talking about in the book here, and that's what allowed them to change it. So my point is it gives you a lot of real-world how-to as well as some good fancy book learning, and it makes it real easy to read. So, yes, I absolutely recommend you guys picking that up. Who else got a question? Question. Oh, okay. I got one coming across from, is that Tolga? Got a question coming across from Tolga. Tolga's from Turkey. Tolga, your question is, John, can you turn back to the slide on, what slide, Tolga? Slide on strategy. Yes, I can, Tolga. Hold on one second. Okay. Strategy. Bing, 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 bing. All right. Here's a slide on strategy. What is it you're looking for, Tolga? Okay. Titles and job functions. All right, let me dig into that a little bit more. What I've found and what my experience has been, and I would be willing to believe that's the same thing for most of the folks out there, you guys call in a lot of different titles in your job. Now, it might fall under a function of what they do, but you call in a lot of different titles. Plant managers, operations manager, COO, there's a lot of things, but they're all doing the same thing. My point when I'm talking about titles and job functions is you got to know who are the people that can benefit from you. Remember, there are three types of folks that are out there. Let me put another slide in here so I can write a little bit here for everybody. There are three types of folks that the conversations start with. Okay, you have entry level folks or entry folks that get you in the door. You've got influencer folks. All right, and those are the folks that talk to the decision makers, and of course you got decision makers. Okay, all of these folks are important. All right, so what you got to do is you got to find out: are you dealing with entry level? Are you dealing with influencer? Are you dealing with decision makers? I'm not saying to bypass one or the other because every marketplace is different, but in my case, I know the higher the level I deal with, the better. All right, and you got to realize that you got to have a certain skill set if you're always dealing with DMs. And so in my case, I'm dealing with owners, I'm dealing with CEOs, those kind of folks. I'm dealing with directors. And I know to deal with that level, I've got to talk a certain way. I've got to be able to talk in a business language. To deal with an entry level may not be as hard, but you're just getting in the door there. But every level has their things. Influencer, and it might be even harder. Who knows? Because they might be a little more calloused, and they might not be as easy to respond to you. But my point is every level's got a different something that you've got to try and get through to. That's up to you to find out. And again, that's something we can go into more detail. But the trick is to kind of narrow it down, figure out exactly who you're dealing with, and then figure out what the best strategy is. Going back to the slide, the best strategy is for that exact thing. All right, next question. Next question. Who's got a question? Question. Who's got a question? All right. Patrick Jebber, I see you're out there. Get attentive, Patrick Jebber. Get attentive. All right, next question I got coming in. It's from Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie. How are you today? Oh, what software this is? This is Smartboard software. If you guys don't know what a smartboard is, just ask your kids because they do. Most likely they have one in their school. Smartboard is an electronic board that acts like a whiteboard. You connect it to your computer, and it can either be backlit or it can be used with a projector. And as you can see, you can write on it and the whole 9 yards, and you actually project it out there. It's a really great software for anybody who does presentations, who does webinars, which should be part of your strategy, which should be part of the pieces that you're using to stay in touch with folks, are webinars. If you do that, I highly recommend this type of software. And the look. Somebody, okay, good question, Stephanie. They're asking, what Stephanie's asking now is, why did I go with such a basic look? Okay, well, it's simple. What I'm trying to do is I want people to pay attention to the content. I'm not worried about having some really super cool transition and some wonderful psychedelic colors and that kind of stuff. What I'm worried about is that people are looking at this and they're actually getting the information they need. I could put together some really cool stuff out of PowerPoint, and it's pretty easy to do. And even in Smartboard, it has some really cool tools. But I don't want to waste my time with that. I'd rather you guys get the information that you need. That's where I choose to put my time. That's your question there, Stephanie? Okay. Who's else? Bob Vokey? Bob Vokey, is that you? You asking me a question, Bob? Okay. All right, Bob, where you at? Oh, I know you're down here somewhere, Bob. Come here. Bi-monthly event. Okay. Any thoughts in making a sit blitz a bi-monthly event in between weeks to complete and follow and ramp up? Yes. I mean, Bob, that's an excellent question. I think, doing that in that method is a great way of doing it. The trick is just being able to maintain the push and ongoing. That's the hard part, because once you ramp up to a certain level of activity, you're going to get a certain amount of response back. I mean, I don't care if you're the worst lead generator in the world. If you're doing a certain amount of activity, you're going to generate business, okay? By getting stuff out there in the marketplace, by making phone calls, you're going to generate stuff. So just make sure you've got the resources to follow up on it. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. And you can, here's the thing. Monitor, measure, modify, okay? Tweak it a little bit. Doesn't got to be full grown each time. Do it a little bit different. But yeah, you can do it biweekly, absolutely. All right. Let's see who else I got here. Toga asks, will your sales team think that you don't trust them when you perform simulations? All right. Yes, Toga, that is a concern. Okay, there's no question that can be a concern. But here's the thing. All right. If you change the culture into this culture of continual learning, continual development, guess what's going to happen? People are going to see it as just part of the everyday process. If you, all of a sudden you say, okay, today we're doing simulations, well, people are going to, look at that as some, some dictatorial kind of thing that's going on, and they might be worried about what's happening. But that's the trick. You've got to establish a culture with your sales team that this is just what we do. We continually learn. We continually practice. We continually get better. And then, Toga, make it fun. Put something at the other end of the coin. Make make it like a survivor type situation, okay? That the last winner, the last one standing, the last one, who does the best simulation gets X. Maybe they get a day off, okay? Find out what motivates your people. Is money motivating your people? Everybody likes a day off, but, maybe it's the money. And, don't do yourself a favor. Give them cash. Don't, take it out of their check, because then you're taking out whatever percentage of taxes. Give them cash. Write it off yourself, okay? If you're a sales manager, if it's $100, give it $100. It's the best $100 you ever spent. But motivate your people, all right? And set them up as a level of continued development in your culture, that you're always going to be doing training. You're always going to be doing learning. Initially, sure, you're going to get some raised eyebrows and some suspicions. But guess what? After the 7th or 8th month of doing these things, everybody just kind of falls in line, and it's just part of what you're doing. Then it's up to you to keep on making it fun and doing more and more cool things. All right, go to. Okay. What else we got? Let's see. Is this a question, Carrie? Carrie Hazen. How can you? Okay. Just because you are successful doesn't necessarily mean you have the correct skills. How can you determine if you or your staff do have the skills? Sometimes people are more lucky than skillful. All right. Excellent questions. Okay. Excellent question there, Carrie Hazen. All right. Oh, sorry, I got to her a little bit late. Carrie, good point. Okay. How can you determine? Well, there's no easy way to answer that question, but here's the way I'm going to tell you. Again, it comes down to what works in your industry. Do you have somebody right now on staff that's really good? Okay, if you do, follow them around, model them. That's what you do. Do you have somebody above you, that's really good? Follow them around, model them. If you don't have anybody that you can model internally, go out and find somebody to model. Okay, there are lots of people out there that can help you out with this. And the trick is finding the one that can speak directly to your skill sets, directly to your marketplace and how you do these things. That's an excellent question. It's a tough question to answer, but the only thing you can do is model who is successful already. And then if you can't find somebody to model, then you've got to go out and, or rephrase, if you don't have anybody in-house to model, then you got to go out and find somebody to model. All right. What else we got here? Anybody else with a good question? Anybody else any questions? All right. That's all the questions I've got. Unless somebody else, this is the last call for questions. Last call. Still got about 60, 70 people sitting here online. Anybody else got questions? You guys just waiting to hear the next one that comes up. Good questions, though, by everybody that sent something across. All right, folks, I'm going to sign out. Thank you so much for coming to Boost Your Sales and Change the Culture. Look forward to seeing you in August. Have a great day, and remember, you can either make sales, you can make excuses, but you can't do both. I'm out of here.